Hi Black Circle family, thank you so much for joining us once again. I'm really excited to have you all here with us, and today I have Julian Hall in the house. Hi Julian.
Hey Zoe, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Ultrapreneur, I think is what we were calling you.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, Ultrapreneur, and we're going to get into kind of what that means and how that's come about. But I just want to say, like, you are, so we're saying you're an entrepreneur, you're an educator, you're an author, and most importantly, you're a father. And your journey is setting up, it was the Ultra Education, and it's a social enterprise, and it's teaching young children about entrepreneurship. So let's jump right into it, and let's start with what inspired you to start Ultra Education.
Yeah, so what I wanted to do was to kind of, when I thought about that question, is to also think about what keeps me inspired. Because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs, and this is something that's really important for entrepreneurial education, is that inspiration is often momentary. And I don't think we talk enough about staying inspired.
Right.
And so I just wanted to include that in, part of the story, because for me, I'm quite lucky in that the inspiration behind the organization was actually my daughter.
Okay.
So as an entrepreneur, I remember when I had an office at home, I would work in the office, and my daughter, as a toddler, she would have her little playthings and stuff. And back then, when we were using Skype, which was a long time ago now,
yeah,
I know, right? Yeah. She would hear the Skype, ringtone go off, and she would know to be quiet. And I'd have my meetings, and I would give it a thumbs up, and she would keep playing and stuff. So we had this little thing going on. And then I remember, and this was around the time actually when I was writing books and I was doing lots of talks and stuff. Anyway, so we were in the supermarket, I've got her in my arms, and she said, Daddy, what's that man doing? I said, oh, he's stacking the shelves. She said, why is he doing that? I said, because that's his job. She said, no, Daddy, a job is when you write books and you're talking and you're on the computer.
She's mirroring what you've seen, right, okay.
And so in her mind, the definition of a job was an entrepreneur. And then 6 months later, we had some family round for a little barbecue thing. And then she's pretty much the youngest out of most of her cousins. So she's about 7, 8 years old now. She comes to the kind of patio doors and she says to the 20 adults in the garden, she says, right, everybody, me and my cousins, we've made stuff for you to buy. And if you don't have any money, we've made you credit cards too.
Oh, wow.
And she proceeded to give everyone a credit card, and they brought out their little wonky pictures and stuff that they'd made. And everyone said to me, Julian, what have you been teaching this poor child? She should be plaiting hair and, watching, I don't know, Peppa Pig or whatever. And I said, I've not been teaching her anything. And it dawned on me that she had just absorbed, right, what I was doing, and she was replaying it like children do. Children act out the things that they see. And it just so happened that she was acting out entrepreneurship. And people thought she was being deliberately taught. So I sat down there and I thought, my wife was, by that time she'd had a long career in early years development. And so we'd realized that, okay, so just like a 7-year-old or even a 5-year-old can learn a number of different languages and musical instruments, and they can be adept at a sport, that they can also pick up entrepreneurial traits and an entrepreneurial mindset and skill set. So I then thought, okay, so maybe if it could be taught or picked up inadvertently, we could teach it deliberately.
Right.
And so that was the thing that was the light bulb moment that I had. And it was in conjunction with a frustration I had at the time, where in working with countless numbers of grown-up entrepreneurs, I realized that every time I would advise them on what they should do, people would always come to me, oh, Julian, I've got this idea, I've got this business, what should I do next, blah, blah, blah. And I would advise them what to do, and they wouldn't do it. And then I'd think to myself, why didn't you do what I told you to do? And then I realized after wrestling with this for so long, the reason why people don't do stuff is because of usually some kind of negative self-talk, some internal dialogue which says, I know Julian said I should double my prices, but my value and my self-esteem won't allow me to do that, right? I know Julian said that I should go to more networking events, but I'm not feeling good about myself, so I don't want people to judge me. I know Julian said that I should take a day off. Or I know Julian said that I should ask my boss for a raise, but I'm afraid of conflict. Now, all of these things we now know come and stem often from childhood.
Yeah, childhood.
And I thought at that point, I'm not qualified for this. So
Right.
I'm fed up with trying to help adults. I don't want to talk to you guys anymore, right? So when I had this experience with my daughter, I thought, oh, now imagine I can circumvent. Imagine I could, sometimes I look at entrepreneurs and think, if I could just talk to you when you were a child, right?
Right.
You would probably on board what I'm telling you, right? So I thought, let's try that as an experiment. And that experiment was, the initial experiment by accident was my daughter. And then I thought, okay, but can we do it with other kids? Mm-hmm. So we trialed it and it worked really well. We had our first pilot in a bookshop in Brixton. And I remember we had about 15 kids in this bookshop. And I said to them, right, guys, you're going to advise the bookshop owner on how they can sell more of their stuff, right? So here's a clipboard. I want you to go inside the shop and outside the shop and make some notes. So I remember this little boy called Max. After the exercise, I said to the bookshop owner, right, these kids are going to advise you on how you can improve your business. So he was like rolling his eyes like, whatever. So then Max walks over to him and he said, you see that book behind you on the shelf? The bookshop owner was like, yeah. He said, is that book for kids? And the bookshop owner was like, yeah, it is. And he said, yeah, but I can't reach it.
Excellent. It's that perspective that we just completely miss as adults, isn't it? Wow. Right.
So then the bookshop owner started to start making notes.
Right. Taking it serious.
And now I was just observing, the minute the bookshop owner started writing down what Max said, Max grew 10 foot tall. And all of those experiences that we then practically saw in front of us, those were the seeds, and that was the inspiration. The kids were the inspiration. My daughter was the initial inspiration. But the reason I said what keeps us inspired is seeing those light bulb moments in the kids, seeing what they've produced, seeing what they're doing. I mean, I'm wearing a jacket from one of our kids' businesses now.
Love that.
Right?
Yeah.
And even just as I left the office, someone said, nice jacket. And I said, oh, it's one of our kids. It's one of our Ultra kids' jackets, right? A young man called Shane. And so for us, it's about young people. Everyone says, children of the future, young people could do all this amazing stuff, but we don't often see it. And I just happened to have come across a vehicle called Entrepreneurship that can help to develop children.
Right.
And it was completely by accident, but I also believe that it was quite purposeful and that my own journey was perfectly set up to do this.
Right. And I always like to talk about purpose. And so you say, by accident, but actually I like the introspectiveness that you could see that it was more aligned to purpose. And children are such, they're a blank canvas, they're kind of untainted, and like you said with the older lots, it's the childhood trauma that we carry with us. And so, instilling it from an early age. And when I was, researching you and Ultra Education, I just thought, this is such a brilliant idea because the normal curriculum that we teach at school, not every child is cut out to be academically inclined, but entrepreneurship, there's something in every child that they can tap into. So I was just like, this is a no-brainer and it should somehow be incorporated somewhere into the normal curriculum. It's brilliant. I really love the idea of it. And so how do you adapt entrepreneurial concepts to make them engaging and understandable for children?
Yeah, so reflecting on this, my son, as I was just saying off air, is like, football crazy at the moment.
Man United.
Yeah.
Yeah. We won't talk about it.
We won't talk about that. But so in the last kind of 18 months, 2 years, he's just like gone from not knowing anything about football to like being, an expert to everybody, right? And so I'm now football dad, driving them around everywhere, being at the edge of the pitch, still don't know the offside rule and all the rest of it, right? So his coach the other day in the middle of the match at the half time, he gave them a grilling. Right? Because they were losing. He gave them a grilling and really spoke to them like they were kind of grown-ups. Okay. Like this is serious stuff, guys. You guys have got to win. You've got to do better. You've got to do this. You've got to do that, right? And I sat there and I thought to myself, now in a football environment, that's quite normal. Meaning, you would expect a football coach to push a kid, right? And even if they're young, you would expect to push them, right? So there is little adaptation from grown-up football to kids football. There isn't much. There's one or two little things, but on the whole, it's delivered pretty much in the same way, right? I say that to say that I have tried not to adapt entrepreneurship.
Okay.
Because when you do that, you are stripping it of the important dynamics and mechanics that they need to learn, right? If you were going to teach a child chess, you wouldn't adapt it. You would just teach them chess, right?
Yeah.
If you were to teach them a musical instrument, how to ride a bike, you might put training wheels on, but even probably some adults probably have training wheels, right?
Yes.
Right. So I'm saying that to say that actually what I did was, instead of adapting it, I looked at what the core principles of entrepreneurship were and stripped away some of the stuff which was actually more related to business than entrepreneurship. So I separate a business person from an entrepreneur. To me, they're not the same person.
Okay,
right?
let's just so let's go into that. How would you differentiate the two differences there?
So there's a really good meme on the internet which uses a banana as an example. So it would say that a business person would buy a banana for 50 pence and sell it for £1. An entrepreneur would take that banana and turn it into banana juice and sell it for £3.
Right, okay.
So they will innovate on the baseline product
Yep.
to give it more value. They will do something different with the banana, right? That's what an entrepreneur would do. A business person might open a shop, right? An entrepreneur would create a brand and then franchise it.
Right, so it's really that big thinking, that upscaling, thinking, okay. But,
and particularly innovating.
Right.
That's the difference between an entrepreneur and a business person, right? So, a business person is essentially just buying low and selling high. It's really what they're doing. And they are trying to leverage people's time. So they might pay a salesperson £50,000 a year so that salesperson can make £100,000 a year, right? So, there are some, there's a Venn diagram between the two, but essentially the difference with an entrepreneur, and not all business people can say this, is an entrepreneur loves what they do.
Right.
There were lots of people who are running businesses that don't love it.
And they're just working for the business. They're not working.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So they have essentially created a job for themselves, which is fine, but they aren't in love with it. They're not passionate about it. It's not going to be a vehicle that they will use to change the world. Entrepreneurs will use that verbiage. They'll say, my business is going to change the world. It's going to help so many people. It's going to do all this kind of stuff. That's the difference, right? So when you boil it down, and it was really me listening to a lot of entrepreneurs who have come and gone, who have changed the world in their own ways, and they would use the term doing what you love, right? So Steve Jobs was famously in his Harvard speech said, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, blah, blah, blah. Lots of, big time entrepreneurs in history have said that. And that resonated with me because people would often say to me, why do you work so hard? I'm like, well, because I really enjoy it. In fact, actually, I love it. I would rather do this.
Yeah. I
remember when I set up one of my first businesses, way back in the day, I remember I was working on this business. I was really enjoying it. And a friend said to me, there's a party on later on, right? Do you want to go? And I'm like, no, I'm good. And at that point, I thought, wow. And I'm in my 20s, right? So I thought, imagine that. I'd rather sit here, work on the business than go to a club.
Right. That's where your interest lies, and you knew that you had the love for it right there.
Right.
Yeah.
So when we deliver the idea of entrepreneurship to a 7-year-old, we say to a 7-year-old, an entrepreneur is someone who does what they love and they make money from it.
Right.
That's it.
Perfect.
So we've just stripped away all of the stuff that I think confuses and often complicates entrepreneurship, moved it away from just being about business and centered it on the thing that drives the entrepreneur.
I think even as an adult, the word entrepreneur is such a big word, and it can sometimes feel a bit daunting. And what we do is I think we underestimate children as well, and their ability to, like you said earlier, to absorb and to learn. And so I actually really like that you don't adapt it. because this is how it is, and they'll have to kind of like grow into it, and it doesn't change just because you're a child or an adult. It stays the same. This is what it takes. So yeah, I really like that. There's no adapting there going on. And so I think we may have touched on it slightly earlier, but what are some of the key skills and mindsets that you instill in young entrepreneurs through the program?
So one of the things that we've done is created our own pedagogy. So the thing that I suppose was new for me was the education bit. So when people describe me, oh, you're an entrepreneur, an educator, I'm like, am I? Because really, I guess, I mean, technically, company's called Ultra Education, right? But it was really because I recognized that actually, and again, this comes from my own experience and experience of most of my friends who are entrepreneurs, right? That entrepreneurs are always learning. They're always learning. So this idea, which I guess kids and young people still have, that once they get to the upper echelons of education, which is university, they never have to learn anything again. They still kind of believe that, right? No one's telling them any different. But entrepreneurs know, in order to stay relevant and to stay current and to grow your business, you've got to keep learning. You've got to keep educating yourself, right?
Constantly,
right? So I wanted to get kids to understand that within an entrepreneurial context, because often entrepreneurship and education have been at loggerheads. They often don't agree. You'll hear entrepreneurs saying, oh, school's a waste of time, education's a waste of time, I dropped out of school when I was 16, blah, 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 right? And then if you go into schools and talk about entrepreneurship, they just think you want to be like, dumb and rich.
Yeah, without the hard work. It's all glamorous. It's all what you see on Instagram, and it's an overnight success, but that is absolutely not what it entails.
Yeah, but a lot of teachers either don't have the experience of entrepreneurs to know that there's a lot more meaning to it, or they've just stayed in academia, so they've not really experienced enterprise in that way. So a lot of them knee-jerk against entrepreneurship and money because they think that is anti-education, when in the real world it's not. That's not how it is. It's just that because the two worlds don't talk much, right? I started to act as that kind of bridge, right? So anyway, to answer your question, because of that, we developed our own pedagogy, so our own educational philosophy, if you will, for kids entrepreneurship. And the first thing we start with is passion. So if we had if there was some kids in the room now, the first thing I would ask them is, what are you passionate about? Doesn't matter what it is. They could say, I'm passionate about my dog. I love my bed. I love my nan.
Right.
I love Nando's, whatever it is. They could say anything, right? And I remember I did this when we first started. I did this in a primary school. And I said, so what are you guys passionate about? And they said, sir, I'm passionate about sleeping. Right?
Me too.
and the teacher looked at me like, how are you going to get around this one? How are you going to answer this one, Mr. Entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So I then said, okay, I love sleeping too. I said, so who makes beds, right? Do you know where you get a bed from? Yeah, you get a bed from a bed shop. I said, do you know that there are companies that sell beds and entrepreneurs that make beds? And not just beds, but pillows. There are, special pillows, duvets. There are new companies springing up all the time, who are specializing in making better, more comfortable beds, orthopedic mattresses, and then it's a big business, right? And so I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. And I just did this off the cuff. I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. You guys are going to design the most amazing beds. So, they got out their A3 sheets of paper, and one of them designed like a bed that could take off into space. What? Another one designed a bed that they could jump on that would never break. Right?
That's brilliant, actually.
It was. And a lot of them came up with some brilliant... Another one designed a bed that they could keep all their snacks in, and one that had TVs all over it. And so just that one question led to me covering 90% of the PSHE curriculum, which is what the teacher told me at the end of the session. She said, do you know you've just ticked all of our learning outcomes in that one session?
Incredible.
Right. Now, I didn't know that was what was going to happen. But I then learned that actually if you unpack entrepreneurship and you tug on that thread, there's so many learning outcomes you get from it. And you can do with absolutely anything. There was a video about 2018 that went around. I looked them up the other day, actually. I think they're still doing it, where there was a couple, and there was a few more couples, actually, in the Shires somewhere up in England where the air is clean. Mm-hmm. And they would bottle fresh air and sell it to China.
What? Oh, wait. Okay, talk me through this, because what?
So there was a video on Facebook. It's on the internet still, right?
Okay.
Where you would see them, you see these couple in their tweed, right? And they've got these big glass jars, and they're literally catching air. You can see them in a big field catching air.
Yeah.
They bottle it, they close it, and they're like, yeah, we've got this fresh air, and we're selling it to the Far East.
Are they selling it under the guise of it's fresh British air? Wow.
It's fresh British air.
Right.
And it was a business.
Selling ice to an Eskimo.
Right. So I said, look, if you can sell fresh air, because I used that to answer the question when people would say, I don't know what to sell. I don't know what, I don't know if people would buy the idea that I've got. I don't know if anyone would buy it. And I'd bring up this video and I'd say, look, there are people selling fresh air.
Yes.
So if they can sell fresh air,
yeah.
you can sell whatever it is you want to sell. It doesn't matter. You can sell absolutely anything. And we now know with the internet, you can even just sell attention.
That's an interesting concept. Yes. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about that. So when you say you can sell attention, what do you mean by that?
Well, that's what we're doing now. So right now, we are creating content, and the purpose of content is to hold somebody's attention. Attention now has a value, right? So if enough people watch this and it holds their attention, there's a value to that.
Right.
And it's so intangible. The point is that today, the way in which an entrepreneur can exercise their creativity means that there is a way that they can monetize it, which didn't exist 10 or 20 years ago without having a very expensive setup and being on proper TV and all the rest of it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas now we've got our own media channels. We can, essentially do whatever we want. And now I always say that entrepreneurship is the greatest opportunity for young people because the barrier to entering the business market or any sector is so low that it's a great time for kids to experiment, to try things out. They don't need, costly equipment and a whole warehouse full of product and a whole supply. They don't need all of that anymore. Right.
We've had YouTube stars making millions, children, just with their YouTube channel. So the power and the autonomy is placed back in our hands in a way that we haven't seen in the past, which is really exciting. But then again, on the flip side of that, there's always a little bit of a darker side of things. But yeah, it's super interesting. So in what ways do you incorporate creativity and innovation into the curriculum? Mm-hmm. And we spoke about innovation.
We did.
Yeah.
So with regards to innovation and creativity, this dawned on me around about 10 years ago. Without creativity, there isn't innovation. Without innovation, there isn't entrepreneurship.
Right.
And the reason this dawned on me was because if you ask an entrepreneur, in their heart of hearts, they see themselves as a creative.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Some of them won't say it out loud because they can't necessarily articulate it or back it up. But actually, they're like, no, I'm a creative. I'm not in the traditional sense of I'm creating art or I'm creating music or I'm creating a beautiful sculpture. Mm-hmm. But they know they're creating something.
It's the process of thinking about something and bring it to fruition. It's that process of creating rather than like you said, the more traditional sense of creating art, music. There's something really powerful in, okay, I'm going to design a chair, I'm going to write it out and then to the manufacturers and now we're sitting on this chair. That, I think, is that what you're trying to touch on? Or...
It is.
Yeah.
And just as a slight tangent,
yeah.
If you zoom out and look at that word creative, mm-hmm. or when you say you've created something, I mean, that's I think the one of the descriptive terms for that is a creator. Right. So actually, some people would say when they ask what's the meaning of life, some people would say, well, it's to create because life is to create. That's what life does. It creates.
Yep.
Right. So the reason why entrepreneurs see themselves as they just call themselves creatives, right, which is it's like a point beneath the word creator, Because that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're creating stuff. And that's why it feels so meaningful to entrepreneurs.
Yes, agreed.
Because they are creators but what they're creating is more than just, a lot of it is intangible.
Right.
Right? Mm-hmm. So you can create a network of people, you're bringing people together. You can't, there isn't something you can necessarily touch and feel, but you've done something energetically. You've done something meaningful.
Energetically. Yeah,
energetically, you've done something meaningful, right? So that's when I realized that it's that creative energy or that creator in entrepreneurs that causes innovation.
Yeah.
And innovation is what differentiates an entrepreneur from a business person.
Right. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So it's not that I incorporated creativity and innovation into the curriculum. It's always there. It's already there.
Yeah.
The problem is that traditional education squeezes it out.
It does. Yep.
It removes it. And if you look at the educational journey of a child, and I remember when we first started, I went and I delivered in a primary school in the morning, and then I went and delivered in a secondary school in the afternoon. And it was that bed example, right? Sleep stuff. Primary school kids all excited, everyone's going crazy. And I thought, I'm going to try this when I get to the other school.
Yeah.
Right. And I was with a bunch of sixth formers and I tried to drop it and it didn't work.
Oh,
right?
No.
And didn't work. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Right. And it's because she fancied him. He's too cool for school.
So they couldn't allow themselves to tap in and right. I got you.
And so I went and asked an advisor of mine, a woman called Dr. Margaret Casely Hayford. And I reflected on this. And she said to me, what happens is in primary school, things are it's all about play.
Yeah.
When you go to secondary school, it's like, right, playtime's over. You've got GCSEs to do. Right. So you better get these grades, young woman. Otherwise, in brackets, I'm going to lose my job.
Right.
Right.
So the external pressure.
There you go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now play is removed. So you imagine you used to playing in the playground in primary school, and play by learning is encouraged in primary school. Get to secondary school, it's right. Okay, what are you going to be when you grow up, 12-year-old? What do you mean? What do you mean? What kind of a
figure it out?
Figure it out. You've got exams coming up.
Yeah.
You've got no time for fun. Right? It's all serious. And then you've got hormones raging and all the rest of it. It's a bad time.
Yeah, really bad time. You'll figure out who you are, who you're trying to be. You've got external pressures, friends. It's just a mess.
It is, right? Yeah. So at that point is when creativity is drained out of you. And you have to conform like you've never conformed ever. Because if you don't get your GCSEs, you're now going to hell. Right. Your life is over.
Yeah, exactly.
Your life's over.
Yeah.
Right. And if you make it through your GCSEs, don't worry, you've got A-levels to come.
Yeah.
And if you don't get your A-levels, your life's double over.
Yeah. It's that pipeline, isn't it? Of, okay, GCSEs, then you might go and get your A-levels, and then you might graduate, and then marriage, then a house. And it's just this awful pipeline. And like you said, it stifles creativity. It stops play. And so to escape that is quite difficult.
Yeah, it is. And often many people don't escape it,
right.
Which is why when I used to coach grown-ups, I remember there was a woman who came and sat in front of me, wanted some business advice, and she was working in retail at the time. And she said to me, she was moaning about it and stuff. And I said, but what do you actually want to do? She said, you know what, Julian, I've always wanted to set up an art school for kids. And I paused and I said, so why don't you just do that then? And she burst into tears. And I thought, what have I said? Is it my aftershave? And after she kind of, composed herself, she said, you know what, Julian, you're the first person that has given me the permission to do that.
Yeah. Everyone
else that I've shared that with, they've said, art school for kids, you crazy. There's no money in that. Who wants to work with kids? You've got a good job. You've got a good head on your shoulders. Why don't you just stick there? You could be a manager one day and blah, right? But creatively and in her soul, she wanted to do an art school for kids and nobody was backing her. And this stranger comes along and says, why don't you just do that?
Right. Just simple, very simple.
Very simple, right? Now, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, but we can get to that. the point I'm making is that I've spoken to so many grown-ups, right? I work with kids, so everyone's a grown-up, right?
Yeah.
Where actually, and we were talking with in the office about this just yesterday, actually, that most degrees aren't followed through into professional life.
Yes, and I can attest to that. So
yeah, and it's because that young person didn't really want to do that in the first place. They did it because they had a lack of information. They had to make a choice, and that choice might have been informed by their grades, by the subjects they took, by their parents, by their teachers, by a mentor, God bless them. But they didn't really have the tools themselves to make a decision themselves.
Right.
Often that information comes externally, right? So then you've done that, but actually there's something, inside you that wanted to do something different, but there wasn't a path for it to be exercised and realized, right? Which is the reason why when kids come to our programs, we don't ask them how well you're doing in school. We don't ask them what your grades are. We don't ask them what you want to be when you grow up.
Yeah.
We ask them, what are you passionate about right now?
Which is perfect, because it's such a loaded question to ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? So yeah, that metric, it just doesn't seem valuable. Yeah.
So often, believe it or not, kids aren't asked that a lot. They're not. You would think.
Oh, okay, right.
You'd think they would be, right?
Yeah.
But they're not. What we found was, it's not often and it's very rare that an adult will say to a child, what are you passionate about right now?
Right, yeah.
And the reason we ask that is because we know that no matter what it is, there is a potential career behind it. We know that, right? However, adults will then, parents, teachers, whomever it might be, will then put their own limiting beliefs on the child.
Yes.
So a child might say, I remember we delivered some work in a school, and one of the girls was kind of walking us out. And I asked the stupid question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was just trying to fill the time, right? It was a bit awkward. So what do you mean when you grow up? I thought she'd probably have been asked that question before. She said, I want to be a lawyer. I looked at her, I said, what do you really want to do?
Yeah.
Said, you know what? I want to have a dance school.
Completely opposite.
I want to have a dance school. I said, so why don't you just have a dance school then? She said, my parents would never let me do that.
Culturally, there's something in that as well, because I've had guests and they're doing amazing things, but they always started out as in the academics of science or medicine, so the culture thing definitely plays a part in that. And
when she said that, I just thought about people that I know who have successful dance schools.
Right.
And I thought, your parents are they're just poorly informed.
Right.
Right. And I know parents are trying to protect their children and they're trying to increase their chances of success. What they don't realize is that success can come at the cost of someone's mental and emotional health.
Absolutely.
Right. So they might become the doctor or the lawyer or the architect or the accountant, but then they'll be sad as hell.
And burnt out and unappreciated, underpaid. Yeah.
Right. And then, at some point, well, for men, we have midlife crises. I don't know what women have, right?
I think we have the same, to be honest.
Probably, right? But a lot of it, often when people come to that moment in their life where they're like, what the hell am I doing? Yeah. Trust me, a large portion of that, what the hell am I doing, is connected with their careers. Because in their heart, they know, I shouldn't be doing this. I should have the art school, the dance school. I should be traveling the world. I just want to have a blog. I just want to run a podcast, right?
Yeah.
But friends, family, everyone will look at me sideways. People will be like, what the hell is she doing? What the hell is he up to? Do you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
So, again, it's that giving of permission, number one. But number two, the thing is that, and I've had to prove this myself, if you are good enough at something, you'll get paid for it. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're really good at something, you'll make all the money you need to make.
Right.
And this is a new concept, meaning you could argue that technically some industries make more money than others, right? So is it true that the finance sector makes more money than the art sector? Probably, right? But there's someone in the art sector who's making more money than someone in the finance sector.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the difference is how good they are at the thing. And what makes someone really good is often how passionate they are about it.
Yeah. And I guess it's not even, it's not, okay, so you're a brilliant artist, you're the next Basquiat, but I think without just having the talent alone, without the passion, I don't think it's going to push you as far as you would want to.
So this is the thing, and I'm glad you brought that up, because there are lots of multi-potentialites out there. There are lots of people who are good at lots of different things.
Yeah.
And we conflate being good at something with meaning that's what you should do to make money.
Right, exactly.
Trust me, there's lots of people in big shiny buildings who are good at their job and they hate it. Loads of people. I know them.
Yep.
You know them.
Yep, we
right?
do.
And all you've got to do is go into the city, look in the big shiny building, you'll see someone at their desk, like, just staring out,
Yeah.
like thinking, please save me.
Yeah.
And I bet they're really good at their job, but they hate it, right? So we optimize for what you're passionate about, because we know if, and you know, for people who are just hard-nosed business people who are like, our passion is, you know, it's wishy-washy. Let me tell you this. If you're not passionate about something, you won't deliver a good product or service.
Right.
You just won't. You won't care enough about it.
Yeah,
right?
not putting yourself into it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And people will, you know, nowadays people are buying, even if people are buying a product, they're still buying a bit of an experience, right? So people want to feel like some love went into whatever it is they're buying. And we're sensitive to that now. We know if someone cares about the service they've delivered or they care about the product that they've sent to you. People know. And so if you are passionate about it, you're going to want the best experience for the person, right? So number one, if you're passionate about something, you will do a good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then for yourself, if you're passionate about it, you will stay in that thing for the long run.
Absolutely.
Because it will mean more to you than money. It will mean more to you than how tired you are. It will mean more to you than, you know, no one believing in you. If you're not passionate about it, then you just won't stay the course. And that's actually fine. You probably shouldn't stay the course. Because then if you're not delivering value in something or you're just not passionate about it, everything takes way longer than you think.
Yeah. And becomes a chore, and yeah.
There you go. So the minute it becomes a chore, you're not passionate about it anymore. And you can account for dips in energy and things, but over the long term, if you think to yourself, you know, I just hate this, right? Over the long term, if you're measuring, I'm not into this anymore, then you shouldn't be doing it.
No, agreed. Absolutely. And so I know we're talking about entrepreneurship, but we can't talk about that without kind of talking about the financial side of things. And how important do you deem financial literacy? I know that seems like a silly question, but, you know, teaching children at a young age about financial literacy.
Yeah. So again, people mistake the ability to make money with the ability to manage money.
Right. Yeah.
So go back to our football thing. I mean, I didn't know this until a couple of years back, but a high percentage of footballers go bankrupt.
Right.
And there's actually a charity set up, forgotten their name now, but there's a number of charities and organizations who are set up to support footballers who go bankrupt. Now you would think to yourself, how the hell could a footballer go bankrupt, right? I mean, Premiership footballers who make, you know, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds, I don't know, they make obscene amounts of money, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's very easy because all you've got to do is manage the money badly, right? And you won't have any anymore, right? So if you then, you know, bring that down to the average person, right? The same thing exists, that you can be making a lot of money, but it's what you do with that money that will protect your future.
Yeah.
And that's the financial literacy bit. That's the financial management bit. So, you know, the idea of, I mean, you know, I said this to my son actually just at the weekend. We saw this amazing Lamborghini, and I said to him, you know, when you're in the Premiership, that's the way you need to buy it, right? Yeah. And I said to him, you know, as we drove off, I thought, if he does get into the Premiership, I don't need to buy me that. Or let me tell him how to do it, right? I said, what you would actually do is, I said, the person who owns that car, they probably did not buy it cash.
Right.
They did not have £200,000 cash in their bank account, and they did not transfer it to the car dealership and buy that car. What they probably did is they probably have money, had they probably generated an income, some kind of revenue, which they put into a revenue generating asset, like a business, like a property, like some other form of investment, and they would use the profit from that investment to pay for the car.
Smart, yes.
I said that's how rich people, 30-year-olds, that's how rich people do it, right? So I'm explaining to him, if they did just, which is what blessed footballers will do, if they did just spend the money, all of it liquid on the car, it's a bad choice.
Because they depreciate in value as well. It's not a good asset to just kind of have hanging around. Yeah,
exactly. Right. It's just a bad idea.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, there's lots of YouTubers who do the fast car thing, and they'll break it down. They'll say, actually, no, I've bought this £300,000 car, but I've got an amazing finance deal. I bought it for $200,000, and I'm going to sell it in 6 months for $320,000. I've made a good markup on it, right?
Right.
And so that idea of what you do with your money and just understanding the compound effect, right? So most people, okay, if I put it back a little bit, for people who are in finance, they know that one of the most important mechanisms for growing wealth is compounding, right? Building your money slowly over a long period of time. People in finance know this.
Right.
Kids don't know this. Young people don't know this. The idea of compounding money is really something that most of us have only found out in our adulthood.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right? And to me, I'm just like, okay, kids should know this. Kids should understand that people who are wealthy have done it over time and sometimes over generations.
Correct. And that we can't overlook that, especially when we're talking about children from, and I hate the word minorities, ethnic minorities, but especially in that context, generational wealth is just not a thing. And I don't know how your upbringing was, if you was financially taught by your parents or your caregivers. I don't know if that was something, but for me, it was something that I had to figure out as I went along. And for a lot of our listeners, it would be the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, my late parents, dad Jamaican, mum Grenadian, the answer is no.
Right. Right.
And that's probably because they weren't taught either.
Exactly.
Right. So however, with saying that, my mother made some amazing financial decisions. Amazing. Right. Which my sisters and I are now looking at like, wow, she had all the financial literacy in the world, but she didn't tell us.
Right.
Right. She didn't tell us.
She missed a step.
She didn't tell us what we're fortunate that she did that. But if she had sat us down and told us, that would have been the icing on the cake. Yeah. Right. And I think that's probably not an uncommon experience for most people of my generation from Afro-Caribbean backgrounds, blah, 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 right? But just to go back to answer your question more directly, I almost think that financial literacy and financial management is more important than income generation. And the reason I say that is because there's another meme. I think I'm just watching memes on the internet, right? It's another meme of Mike Tyson, who made hundreds of millions of pounds, dollars, and went broke. And then a cleaner who worked for 30 years and retired on like $3 million.
Right. Okay. Right.
Because of this compound.
Yes.
Because essentially he just saved all his money and put all of his money into a stable, slow-growing trust, right? Index fund. And he did it for 30 years. Now, if you go into this stuff, there's loads of stuff on TikTok and across the web. Everyone's talking about it now. Is how do you turn £500 a month into, $1 million? You just save it for a long period of time and put it into an index fund, let it compound over time, right?
Right.
And that's what the cleaner did. And that's what Mike Tyson didn't do, right? So it's not that income generation isn't important, but you can make all the money you want. But if you don't manage it well, then it will come to nothing. And actually, there was a term which, oddly enough, I picked up from our friend Kanye West when he actually used the term financial engineering.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So a lot of people talk about financial literacy, financial management. And then he actually used the term financial engineering. And I thought, that's really interesting. You can tell that, you could tell where he's at.
Yeah. At next level.
At next level. When he's talking about financial engineering, I understood it. It's not something that business people aren't aware of. It's just the concept is probably used mainly by people in the finance sector. If anyone's in wealth management, private equity and all the rest of it, they'll understand financial engineering. However, Kanye West is a rapper.
Right.
And he's using the term, which made me think, well, if you're using the term, I could.
That should be.
Right. And actually, it's not the fact that he used the term, it's the fact that the language is alien to most people and it shouldn't be.
Right.
The language is alien, yeah? So, there is a lot of work being done in the youth and education sector around raising the awareness and raising the level of resource and access to stuff around financial literacy. There's a lot of stuff missing from it. Actually, there was a parent who sent me a WhatsApp, literally could have been last week, saying, Julian, look, I've seen a lot of stuff around financial literacy, but there's nothing on generational wealth, wealth creation, right? And I said, that's because, I think it was just last week, he said that she's found a lot of stuff for her teenage girls on financial literacy, but nothing on wealth generation. And I paused and I understood why there wasn't anything around wealth generation broadly. And that's because generational wealth in the last 5 years is something that really only the Black community talk about.
Okay. Right. Go on.
And the reason we talk about it is because generational wealth has already existed in British and European communities for a long time.
Yeah, it's a given in their culture.
It's a given in their culture, right? It's more likely that they'll have a rich uncle or an aunt, or someone who will pass down a property. That's normal to them. It's not normal in the Black community, right? So, and I'm saying that to say that there's a cultural misstep in the emerging discussion around financial literacy for children. And that cultural misstep is that if you look at it from an equitable position, meaning equity isn't giving someone the same thing, it's giving them what they have missed out on. And what the Black community and minority communities or global majority communities have missed out on is wealth creation and general wealth creation, right? So because we're not creating the content, it means that, the more traditional British producers of this content, as far as they're concerned, like, isn't that a given?
Yeah.
Don't really know about this stuff. It's norm, right? Yeah. Whereas in the Black community, we're like, no, please, we don't know how to do it, right? Our kids, we don't know how to do it, right? So I actually said to her that it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. Just capacity not gotten around to it, but we will. We will get around to that bit because we don't have it. Other communities have it. We don't have it. We haven't got to the place where our communities are benefiting from generational wealth. We're not there yet. It's not given for us. So for me, it's like a lot of the content that's out there is around, I say the basics of financial and personal finance.
Yeah.
Is as well. So a lot of it is centered around personal finance. It's not actually centered around enterprise finance or entrepreneurial finance. A lot of it is loans, credit cards, interest rates, mortgages. All of that is important, but it's like that's just part of the cake. There's other ingredients that go towards making it what it should be. And so, we are, as a sector, the financial literacy sector, it's just started, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Right?
It's just started. And I was actually saying that there's a number of organizations who have been going for a long time. And I'm sure that they have done some great work, but they aren't on the radar of lots of communities. Lots of people just don't know about them.
Right.
I know about them because I'm in the sector, but a lot of people just don't know about them. And one of the things that we've been good at Ultra is getting the concept out there. And the reason we've been able to get the concept out there is because I have a marketing background. I used to run a marketing agency in Shoreditch in a previous life. I knew that introducing a new concept of kid entrepreneurship or kidpreneurship into the zeitgeist, the only way I could break that and not make it seem like it's just for the lucky few was to promote kid entrepreneurs. So if you go on to any of our social media timelines and scroll all the way back to when we first started, you'll see very early on, the minute we had kids who were doing something special, we would promote them.
Right.
Because that was the evidence. And I knew that if parents saw 12-year-old Jasmine who had a colouring book and she just sold 100 of them, which is a real example, they would be like, I want my child to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
And teachers would be like, I want my students to do that as well. So, and that's how we grew. And that's how the awareness built.
So I want to switch gears just slightly because I want to talk about Yo Buddy, which is a brilliant concept. And you just mentioned about, my child selling X amount of books. And so please, if you could let the audience know what that is, because I think it's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, about 18 months ago, this happened on more than one occasion. Parents came to me because by this time we had hundreds of kids who would set up businesses. A couple of parents came to me and said, you know what, Julian, it'd be really great if you would set up a marketplace for these kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, more work to do. Like, I ain't got time, right? And so, and then another parent mentioned it and another parent mentioned it. And then a year later, I sat down over one Christmas and thought, okay, let me get my head around this. Because the thing that was quite daunting for me was that I would have to, I've come from a tech background. I thought, I'm going to have to build all this tech from scratch. And then I realized that I could cobble the tech together with Shopify, another plugin, and just do some, sprinkle some magic dust over it and make it work. So I was able to put it together myself over a few weeks. Came up with another brand. So Yo Buddy is short for Youth Business Direct. And then launched it. We already had the kids, right? We could, within a few weeks, we had about 100 kids on the platform. And the reason we did it, the reason the parents were asking in the first place was because, one, they wanted help with their own kids selling online.
Yeah.
Right? And number two, they realized that you've got all these kid entrepreneurs, but they are everywhere. Like, people can't discover them.
Right. So you're centralizing them into one place. Right.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. What if you just put them all in one place? What would happen? And so that's what we did. And we've just had an amazing reception to it. It's now part of our clubs. Kids know that. And the other reason actually was because we do kids business fairs, which are really popular. We did our 10th one end of last year. And kids in our clubs would aim to launch at one of our fairs. Mm-hmm. But those fairs might happen once or twice a year. But now they can launch on Yo Buddy. They don't have to wait till the physical fair. They can launch online.
Yeah.
So they can launch online. They can have their own website. They can, go to physical events like ours and others. But it just made sense for us to do that.
I love that concept. It's brilliant. And so just going back a little bit, is there any particular success stories that you really love from either Ultra Education or Yo Buddy, any particular children that's been like, wow, this is, it's gone through the roof?
Yeah. So one of our most popular sellers on Yo Buddy actually is a young girl called Precisa. Mm-hmm. She has a business called Healthy Kind Deodorants, which she launched during the pandemic. And it's deodorants with no nasty stuff in it.
Yeah.
And she is an absolute star. She takes every opportunity to promote herself. She's been on a few podcasts herself recently. She's always at any opportunity she gets to pop up and sell her deodorants at, whether it's at the council or a local fair somewhere. Mm-hmm. She's always there. She was just recently elected as deputy youth mayor in her local borough. And she sells like hotcakes on the platform. People just love her stuff because it's a consumable, isn't it?
Yes.
Right? Yeah. It's not something you buy once and you just leave it. It's something that you'll use all the time. I use them and
you're all good.
Yeah, they're all good. Right, cool. Thumbs up, Precisa. But and she's just full of great energy. If I'm honest, you can tell going back to the passion. You could tell she enjoys it.
Yeah.
And the feedback she gets just reinforces. You can't, but help to look and smile.
Yeah.
And just be proud of her, even if you don't know who she is. You just look at her and just think, wow, you're just amazing, right?
Yeah.
Young man called Shane, SP Creations. I'm wearing his merch today, and he's a fashionista, but he also uses his fashion as a vehicle for inspiration. So he does like motivational talks on Instagram, and he's like 10 years old, but you'll watch his videos and you're like, I'm ready for the day.
I thought he was going to say like a teenager or something. This is fantastic. Wow.
He's a kid. Right?
Crazy.
In the truest sense of the word.
Yeah.
But he's got the biggest heart you'll ever see.
Yeah.
And he's just genuinely inspirational. It's not, you can tell he's not being coached or he's not acting. You can tell that he really believes it. And just the energy you get from him is just like, wow, you know, and again, he uses his clothing to, as a vehicle for his messages. And, you know, at the back of this, it says strength. And we have another young girl called Lauren, who wrote a book called Journey of a Powerful African Girl during lockdown, which was her way of managing the dad who left the family home.
Right.
And she celebrated the strength in her mum and in her culture.
Powerful.
And she did that at like 9-10 years old, Lauren.
Powerful.
She's from the Cape Verdean community. A year later, it was then discovered that she was the youngest Cape Verdean author. About 2 months ago, she was invited to Cape Verde by the Prime Minister.
No way. That's fantastic. You must just feel so much pride in what you're doing. You know, purpose aside, it's just like you're inspiring so many younger minds and their trajectory and their future. You and Ultra Education has had a huge hand in that. So that must bring you a lot of peace and joy.
Yeah, that's related to one of the values, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. Actually, we are about to kind of slightly wrap up. I know that you recently received Freedom of the City. Congratulations, by the way. So looking ahead, what's next for you?
So you could almost say that it'll be 10 years next year since we started the organisation. And in that 10 years, you can almost say that we've been testing out a few things.
Okay.
And now we know what we're doing, right? Yeah. And so I guess it was just really building the foundation for a national growth plan, essentially. So that's what we want to do over the next 5 years. We want to be in every major region across the UK. We've already got interest internationally. Mm-hmm. So that's what we want to do. We just want to grow the organisation nationally and internationally.
Brilliant. I want to see it everywhere because it's so important. It really is. And that does bring me on to values. So at this point, I like to ask my guests a value for their personal life and then a value for their professional life. So shall we start with professional life?
Yeah. So there's a book called Success Through Stillness, which was written by Russell Simmons, founder of Def Jam. And, you know, he's really big into Buddhism now and all the rest of it. And I listened to the book summary on YouTube. I haven't got time to read books.
Audiobooks.
It was an audiobook, right? A slight aside, I think it was Naval Ravikant who said that most books should be a blog. Most blogs should be a tweet, right? So you just need to just chop away. What are you actually trying to tell me here?
Yeah.
And in his book, I was made familiar with this term called equanimity. And equanimity is the ability to remain calm even when things are going wrong.
Right. Oh, I love that word, equanimity. Okay.
Yeah. So I really resonated with that because I found that it worked. And that actually it was something that I had as a superpower, if you will, but I wasn't using it intentionally. So I knew I had it, but he gave me a word to use. He gave me something to really anchor down on it. And I have found that to be invaluable professionally, because any entrepreneur will tell you, and I'm sure you know this yourself, that things are always going wrong.
Yes.
They're always going wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the question is, how do you respond to it?
Yeah.
Do you respond to it in an equanimous way? Or, because essentially what equanimity means from the word to be equal, it means that you aren't in peaks and troughs. Your emotions aren't up and down based on an external circumstance. It means that no matter what's happening, you remain calm at all times.
Yeah.
Which means that if you remain calm, it means you could just make better decisions.
Yeah.
And you're in control of your emotions.
Absolutely. And what I've kind of learned as well is that I'm not my emotion. I'm experiencing my emotion. So I'm experiencing sadness or frustration, but it's an energy that's passing through. So I really love how that all kind of ties them together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that I have to exercise that a lot. And people have, you know, they've mentioned it to me because they've seen me in like high pressure scenarios and in situations where things are going wrong. And they're like, aren't you upset about this? Or, you know, I thought you'd, you know, kind of be upset about it, or you wouldn't, you know, you'd feel away or whatever. I'm like, well, you know, because I know things will pass.
Yeah.
I know that I just need a minute, you know, and that minute will be disrupted by an emotional turmoil. And also because when you get upset about something, it affects your central nervous system. And it takes time for you to calm down. I ain't got time to get upset and calm down. I've got stuff to do, right? I've got to, you know, people say protect your energy, right? That's how I do it. I protect my energy by using equanimity.
Love that. And for your personal life?
So for my personal life, the same is true. However, I think for my personal life, it's more about being kind.
Important.
Yeah. Being kind to yourself and being kind to others. Not to the point where I've got a cup which says, never let anyone take you for idiot. It's a brilliant cup. There's a company called Hood Greetings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they sent me some stuff, and one of them is never let anyone take you for idiot. So there's that balance, right? Meaning that when people do stuff, number one, it's often about them, not you. Number two, they could be going through stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it's often better to give people a wider berth than you would normally.
Yeah, a bit of grace.
Yeah. Right? You know, people would probably argue I do that too much for people, but it is what it is. But again, it's just, you know, the line where you give them grace, but not grace to the point where it negatively impacts you.
Right. Yeah.
Because ultimately, everyone's on a journey, everyone's learning, everyone's messing up, everyone's, you know, trying to figure it out. So if you're just going to clash and have friction all the time, it's not. No,
it's just not conducive to life.
Not conducive.
Julian, that's the end. Wow, what a fantastic chat. I really, really enjoyed that. There's so many gems in there that I hope our listeners can take away from. If people want to follow your journey and Ultra Education and your buddy, where can we find you?
Sure. So the website is ultra.education.
Yep.
You can find us anywhere on socials. Type my name in, it'll come up anywhere. Julian Hall, the Ultrapreneur.
Yep.
All of the above. Yobuddy.com, yobudi.com. Again, we're on social. Say hello, we'll say hello back.
Amazing. And thank you guys for tuning in again. I really appreciate it. And you can find Black Circle on Instagram on theblackcircle.podcast and on YouTube at The Black Circle. Until next time, bye.